Hey everyone, in this video I wanted to talk about patch 8.1, what's coming up and when, how I feel about the different elements that are being implemented in patch 8.1, and what effect I think they'll have on the channel and the content that I'll be producing. So first off, it was announced that patch 8.1 is not going to be one big dump coming out on December 11th of all the content that's coming. There are actually going to be some staggered content release things. And we don't know for sure whether within those staggered releases there's also going to be time gating. If you don't know what time gating it is, it's basically they say, hey, you could do part 1 of the story and part 2 doesn't unlock until next week, and then part 3 unlocks the week after that. So essentially, they cause your progression to be stalled by purposefully locking off content behind a specific date when it's going to release. Now, what's happened with patch 8.1 is essentially a big chunks of content have been time gated in general, but we don't know for sure whether within each of those different blocks there's going to be more time gated content. So I want to make it very clear this isn't intended to be a negative video. It's not going to be an entirely positive video either. I'm just trying to hold like a balanced opinion here and set some realistic expectations. So let's take a look first at what's coming out on December 11th. Now, I'm going to go through some of these things and talk about them a little bit more in detail and kind of offer my opinion on them and, what I think it's going to mean in terms of content and that kind of stuff as well. Some of this stuff I'm just briefly going to touch on, but what I really want to focus on is what is actual in-game content that you can play over and over again, and you may, depending on what you like, may actually keep you entertained throughout this entire patch, and what stuff is really just, kind of superficial level, doesn't actually give you a reason to play the game, sort of features that are getting added in. So the first thing is we're getting a continuation of the war campaign. So this is good. It's additional story content. From what I've heard, it only lasts maybe an hour at most. So you're looking at, if you're playing this on Horde and Alliance, then you're probably looking at maybe 2 hours of content total for the war campaign. Okay. What we have to keep in mind here is everything dropping on December 11th, we don't get the next update for 8.1 until January. So we're looking at probably at least a month worth of time between the first drop for 8.1 and the next drop. So 2 hours for war campaign if you play both sides. I personally haven't even finished the war campaign on one of my characters because I've been busy leveling alts, so I've got to catch up and then play through this. As far as this goes, I'm not making any content about the war campaign. For me, I just see it as something to do primarily for rep and maybe a little bit of storyline as well. So if you're really into the war campaign, you've got a little bit of a additional storyline here. But if you're like me and you're just like, yeah, I'm just doing it so I can get the rep and unlock these allied races, then I don't think this is that big of a deal, and it's not really a feature to be excited about. The next thing we have is the heritage armor for blood elves and dwarves. Now, this is cool cosmetic stuff. You don't need to re-level a character in order to do the quest to get the heritage armor. From what I understand, the quest for the heritage armor is about 30 minutes to an hour as well. So if you do it for both races, again, you're looking at maybe 2 hours of content total. So we're up to 4 hours of story content so far for a month. And for me, I have a max level blood elf, and I think I have a max level dwarf. You don't need to be max level, from what I understand. You just need to be exalted with Ironforge or Silver Moon City. And so I'll probably do both of these pieces of content, but like I said, maybe they'll be interesting for a little bit of story, but they're definitely not going to take a lot of time. Paragon Reputation Rewards. This is essentially, if you don't know what this is, once you max out your reputation for a faction that has World Quest available, so say you max out your Voldenai faction rep or your Talanji's expedition or your, any of that kind of stuff. Once you're at Exalted with that faction, you can continue to gain reputation with them when you do World Quest, and at the end you can get, every time you would get the next level of reputation, essentially you're able to instead get a bag that has a chance to drop a random, like a pet or something like that. It's a chance to drop that kind of stuff. So, Paragon Reputation, a feature first introduced in Legion, makes a return at 8.1. Unlike Legion counterparts, however, there seem to only be pets available this time. So, what does that really mean? It means that this feature right here is just something for you to continue to grind World Quest with over and over again. And there aren't a whole lot of World Quests coming in 8.1, so it's grinding the same crap you've been grinding since the expansion came out. I think many people find World Quest to be kind of dull and uninteresting. I personally just try to run them to gear up my alts and maybe use them for rep, but I know I personally hate rep grinding, so as soon as I hit Exalted with anything, I don't care at all about grinding reps. So this one, to me, it's not actually a source of content. It's just a way to keep you on a treadmill and make you feel a little bit better about it. So I don't think this is a very positive. It's not a bad feature, but I don't think it's really adding anything. We've got the Sourfang and Tyrande quest lines. So once again, this is story content, and to my knowledge, it takes 30 minutes to an hour to complete. So if you do both of these quest lines, you're at about 2 hours again. This is pretty much purely just story, from what I understand. Unlike the war campaign, where you're going to gain reputation, and the heritage armor, where you get a transmog set, this is just pure storyline. So now, if you're doing both sides, both factions, we're up to 6 hours of content. If you're only doing one faction, we're up to 3 hours of content. We've got new island expeditions and a vendor for the island expeditions as well. You're going to be able to use your doubloons, turn these in for currency to get, mounts and things like that. So the new island expeditions, what's coming with that? So there's a couple of things here. So first off, we've got the 2 new island expeditions. We've got Havenswood and Jorundal. And there were some pictures here. So this is Havenswood. I think this looks really nice. The art team always does a really good job in, they've been killing it in Battle for Azeroth. The environmental artists, anyway. And so this looks like a nice change of pace from the island expeditions that I've seen. A lot of them have been primarily like outdoors, like you just, there's no signs of civilization at all. I think it's going to be really neat to play in a town like this. And then also Havenswood is kind of a like Vrykruel, Drustvar themed one, which is something else that's a change up from what we've seen so far. Now, here's the thing. I say I'm excited about these locations, and I'm excited about island expeditions and some of the changes that are coming as well, such as they're adding Azerite ruptures, Azerite extractors. We'll talk about this in just a minute, but the reason for that is because I'm an altaholic and I have alts to level, and island expeditions, in my opinion, are a more interesting way to level than just purely by doing questing. If you're leveling alts, if you're leveling your main character, you want to do the quest because you want the reputation. But when you're leveling an alt, using an island expedition is perfectly fine. You get to go through, you get your experience, you get to, try out different builds, whatever you want to do there, and you have a chance to get the drops from the island expeditions. Now with the vendor, you can also be earning doubloons to turn in for the various rewards that you can get from the vendor as well. If you're already at max level, let's say you're not an altaholic like me and you're just playing a single character, or maybe you have, 2, maybe 3 characters at max level, I don't think island expeditions are worth it at all. At that point, it's just an Azerite grind where you're just sitting there farming, the next level on your Heart of Azeroth, with trying to get a chance for, some kind of drop like a pet or a mount or something. And I don't do that on my max level characters. I think it's a waste of time. I'd rather be doing some other kind of targeted gear progression, or going back and trying to mount farm old content, or playing a different game than doing island expeditions over and over and over again. Now, maybe some of these improvements will make island expeditions a little more interesting. So we have 2 new events. We've got Azurite Ruptures and Azurite Extractors. You can read about those here if you want. But they've also done a couple of things here. So these are events. These 2 are events you can encounter in place of an invasion. And invasions are supposed to have more variety. For example, you might get South Sea Pirates and Earth Elementals instead of the entire invasion being one or the other. There also work on clustering NPCs that inhabit the islands so that they're closer together. I think this would probably make island expeditions pretty. I think it would make them a lot better because currently, when you're trying to get from place to place, you just constantly aggro mobs all the time, and that makes it feel like you're kind of being inefficient with your time sometimes because you're not able to go straight towards the things that you want to get to and target. So I think clustering the enemies together, A, is going to make them better to AoE down, but B, is going to give you some paths to actually travel around the island and get to see it without feeling like you're only getting to explore like a third of the island because you're constantly stopping to just, take down trash. So I think that could be pretty good as well. But the reality is, if you're on a max level character, I wouldn't do these. I don't even know if I consider this, decent content either. Me, I'm going to be playing, my alts, trying to get everything up to max level so that I can make guides for everyone. And so you're going to be seeing me doing these island expeditions, and I'm excited for the changes and the new locations. But the real question is, will I ever go back and play an island expedition once all my characters are at max level? And I'm pretty sure the answer is no, unless they do something to drastically change the system and make it more interesting. Next, we have incursions. So incursions are similar to invasions for Legion. We've talked about these before. Wowhead has a preview here of kind of how this works. So what's going to happen is you're going to see a zone on the map. So, for example, this is Tiergard Sound. There's going to be an incursion happening. When that happens, the incursion takes over the zone, essentially. Whatever world quests were there disappear. New world quests come in specific to the invasion. There's usually, I think, 5 or 6 of them. And what you do is you can go through and you can complete the world quest. You get a little quest. So right here it says 4 horde attacks repelled. So you do 4 of these world quests, and then you get a quest to go and fight a boss. So it's not all that exciting. Once again, if you're on a max level character, the reason I'm excited for these is they were a good way to level your alts in Legion, because the invasions, or in this case the incursions, are available to characters below 120. So when you hit 120, you get access to all these world quests. Prior to that, you can't access them. The only one I think we can get to below 120 is the weekly island expedition quest. So this gives you a way to go out and do 5, 6 world quests with your alt characters below level 120, and then that helps you to level them up, because in a lot of cases, if there's a reward that is geared towards max level, instead they will substitute that reward with bonus experience for characters below 120. So let's say there was like an item level 340, shield or something that was a reward for a world quest. Well, instead of giving you that piece of gear, that's a max level character only reward, that would be replaced with bonus experience. So you would get the experience from doing the world quest, which is pretty good, and then you also will get that bonus experience that is a reward replacement. Now, the thing about this is when I did it in Legion, you were able to get your heirloom gear up so that it scaled from 110 to 120, which meant you could get, a 50% or so bonus to all that experience. And generally speaking, what would happen is I would get an entire level's worth of experience on every character per incursion or invasion. So really what that meant is if your character is 110, it would take 10 levels, 10 incursions, 10 invasions to get to max level, roughly. And that was pretty nice. These invasions happen, they're on a timer. They last, I think, for about 4 hours, and I want to say there's 8 or 12 hours between that and the next one, or Something like that. There's usually, I want to say, 2 or 3 per day. So they're not up all the time. So, you can't do them all the time. And when one pops up, you have like a 4-hour window to do all the incursions, get all the experience on all your alt characters, and then you're done until the next one comes around. And this is how I leveled a lot of my characters in Legion. So, once again, you're hearing kind of the same thing here, which is alts, 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 experience, experience. If you're already a max level, in my opinion, they have to do something pretty crazy to make incursions feel like they're worth the time for anyone who is playing on a max level character. And I think that, ultimately, if you're on a max level character, what this boils down to is world quests. It's just more world quests. So, I don't think that's particularly interesting, as in terms of a piece of content. Then we have account-wide reputation credit and transmogs. So that's purely cosmetic. It doesn't add anything for you to do. So that's really not content. Account-wide flight paths, same thing. That doesn't add anything for you to do. The new Darkshore Warfront and Darkshore Overworld revamp. Plus, we get the Warfront vendor. Okay, so a couple of things here. From everything that I've seen, the new Darkshore Warfront is almost exactly like the current one we have in Arathi Highlands. And there's a couple small tweaks, but they don't do enough to make this a different Warfront compared to Arathi Highlands. It's essentially a change of scenery. It's a visual change, much like I talked about with the island expeditions. Like, the core content is the same. You're just getting a different visual representation of that. Now, if you're into transmog, you'll be able to collect transmog sets from here. I think the or the revamp of the overworld for Darkshore is a little more interesting because we're going to get that same, nice new graphics update, new rare spawns and stuff in Darkshore. But ask yourself, like, how often have you been going out to Arathi to do anything out there recently? Maybe the first couple of weeks that Warfronts were out, it was like, all right, let's go, let's get out there, let's farm these rares and try to get these mounts, and we're doing quests, and Warfronts are new, but now Warfronts aren't really new, and I think a lot of people don't like them anymore. They're just 100% max level content. I do think this is better content to play than Island Expeditions or World Quest. The other thing to note about these is that the eye level rewards for Warfronts, for this Warfront, is not going to be higher than Arathi. Essentially, what they're doing is once the new season for Battle for Azeroth comes out, they boost the eye level of everything. So until that happens, Arathi is going to be 340 with a 370 reward, and Darkshore is going to be 340 with a 370 reward. And then once Season 2 hits, all those item levels will increase across the board. Then when Season 3 hits, all those item levels will increase across the board. So you're not even going to be able to go to these Warfronts, to the Darkshore Warfront on December 11th when this part of patch 8.1 comes out. You're not even going to be able to go there and get significant gear upgrades. It's going to be the same as doing the Arathi one in terms of the reward structure. Now, the other thing here is that, there's going to be the Warfront's vendor who's going to be selling some different items, and that's going to give you, I guess, kind of a reason to maybe want to play Warfronts over and over again. As far as I'm concerned, I don't think that Warfronts are particularly fun. I don't think they're engaging. I think they're boring to watch. They're boring to stream. So chances are you're not going to see me do anything for Warfronts except maybe put out a guide as to where the rares are, or noticeable difference between Darkshore and Arathi. After that, we've got class changes, and these are pathetic. Okay, I'm just going to come out and say these class changes, from what I've seen, are pathetic. They're... I don't even know where to start with this. If you look at the class changes, then what you're going to notice is the majority of these changes are numbers. They're just numbers changes. So one of the things they said in 8.1 is that shamans would be getting an update. So let's go down and take a look at shaman. And I think shaman can kind of sum summarize my primary issues with these class changes. So the shaman needed kind of an overhaul. I'm going to look at enhancement because that's what I'm the most familiar with here. And so what we see here, many abilities' innate damage has been lowered but compensated through the enhancement aura. So Crash Lightning, Flame Tongue, look at this. Percentages. There's no new spells. All we're seeing here is numbers changes and not much else. So they didn't do anything. If we look at Elemental, which needed a lot of help as well, you know, they mark these. They say new spells, etc. Like here's Aftershock. Your spells have a 25% chance to refund the maelstrom spent on them. And this says Earthshock and Earthquake have a 25%. So like almost nothing here is changing the way that this class plays. They're primarily just numbers changes. So the thing that irritates me about this, there's a couple of things. One, they said that the changes that needed to happen for Shaman couldn't be done in patch 8.0 and they were going to have to wait till 8.1 because they needed a lot of work. Well, all they did was adjust numbers, which they could have done anytime in a hotfix or a weekly patch or whatever. They haven't really overhauled how Shaman plays. There's the structure, the rotation, everything is fairly similar. There's a couple of tweaks, but fairly similar. So why didn't they just do this earlier? If they needed to wait till now, why haven't they gone the full direction and said, hey, we're actually making some mechanical changes to the way that Elemental Shaman plays? And so this is a class that they said needed an overhaul, like really needed work. And this is what we get out of it, is some numbers changes. So if you think about any other class, any other specialization that wasn't, you know, put out there as needing a significant overhaul like this, what's really changing for them? It's primarily numbers changes again. You know, 10% this way, 10% that way, give them an extra 100 damage, take another 100 damage away. So there aren't any significant class or specialization playstyle overhauls. These are just numbers tweaks, which means that for the most part, your classes are not going to feel any different than they have this entire expansion. So these class changes, I don't really consider them to be any sort of measurable content because it's just the same thing that you've been doing this entire time. Leveling changes, so once again, this is something that's just going to apply to alts if you have them, and the bulk of these changes affect characters below 110. They actually affect characters between like level 60 and 80 the most, but they do help as you get all the way up to 110. From 110 to 120, the leveling changes, the reduction in XP is almost nothing. So that's not going to change, you know, the speed at which you get to level, to max level. If you're already starting to play Battle for Azeroth, it's not going to do anything like that. So if you're already at max level playing your main character, this does nothing. If you are already at 110, this basically does nothing. If you're leveling, you know, a character from scratch, this is going to help you out for sure. And then Champions of Azeroth reputation gains, changes. This is basically if you hit Revered with Champions of Azeroth on any of your characters, then your other alt characters, once again, alts, this does nothing for your mains, will be able to get all the Azeroth, or Heart of Azeroth item level upgrades from Magni without having to do the reputation themselves. So this is going to be something that you literally log in and you just have it. So let's look at this, okay? In summary here, we've got, let's assume you're playing, let's be generous and assume you're playing both factions, like I am. You've got 2 hours of War Campaign, you've got 2 hours of Heritage Armor, you've got 2 hours of the Saurfang Tyrande, and that's being generous with the time as well. So we're looking at 6 hours worth of new progressive content. You've got a Warfront that basically plays out the same as the one that we already have and doesn't have any increased item level or anything like that. We've got the Darkshore Overworld revamp, which is supposed to have some world quests, more world quests, and you'll do a little rare farming. I imagine that'll probably keep most people busy for 2 weeks, maybe 3 at most, if you're not, if you play fairly casually. You've got a couple of new locations for island expeditions, which if you're on a max level character, who cares? You've got the incursion, which if you're on a max level character, who cares? And then you've got a bunch of stuff that doesn't give you anything to play. It just adds to existing systems or maybe makes stuff a little bit more convenient. So there's not a lot coming, and the stuff that is coming doesn't change what we've already been doing in 8.0. So this is why I said I was disappointed that Season 2 is coming in January. I feel like if Season 2 would have come out on December 11th, then at least we would have a new tier of item level to farm, and then going back and doing all this crap, doing the island expeditions, the incursions, the new world quest in Darkshore, that kind of stuff could have at least rewarded us with higher item level gear to progress our characters with. But it doesn't. Okay, it doesn't, because none of that item level bump is happening until January. So not a lot of content here. I've heard that the war campaign, the heritage armor, and the quest lines take about 30 minutes, honestly. So if you're playing one side, you've got an hour and a half of story content, and then you're either going to be doing world quest, island expeditions, world quest, warfront. So, not exciting. As far as what that means for me with the content, I've got plenty of additional updates for leveling alts, which is mainly what I need to do. Get all my characters to 120, then I could just start making guides. That can be the primary thing that I'm doing instead of worrying about, oh no, I need to level this character up because if I don't, then they're not at max level and I can't make the guides. So, that's okay for me. I've got incursions, I've got island expeditions to do as well. And those two things I think will help bolster my motivation to play alts. You're going to see me doing island expeditions, incursions, that kind of stuff on stream, leveling up my alts as well, and checking out what the numbers changes actually do for the classes. So after all this, Season 2 comes sometime in January. We don't have a specific date for this yet. Along with that comes the raid. So if you don't care about raiding or you don't raid very much, then that's basically zero content. If you are into raiding, this is a huge piece of content. So depending on where you fall on that spectrum, you either get a lot of content to play or absolutely nothing. I tend to trend more towards not doing the raiding stuff very often anymore. So for me, this is almost like not a piece of content. But I think it's unfair to complain too much about this because it is a big piece of content. Just because it's not the piece of content for me doesn't mean that it's not content. The 5th Azerite ring is coming then as well. I think we've all pretty much been burnt out on Azerite gear. That's not going to change. When we get the 5th, I don't feel like new Azerite gear would really... it would help on December 11th, but... we've all been putting up with it so far, and we know that the change is coming, so I think, it coming in January, that's fine. I honestly would not want the new Azerite gear to come independent of the item level upgrade anyway, because then you would get this new gear, maybe be excited about it, and then all of a sudden there's a huge eye level jump, and you have to worry about trying to get that piece of gear again at the appropriate item level. So I want the this here higher item level loot from dungeons, emissaries, and warfronts to be released at the same time as the 5th Azerite ring. But the 5th Azerite ring is not content. Okay, that's a change to the stuff that you get from content. There's a new Mythic Plus affix. So this one's themed around this particular patch called Reaping. Also not content. It's a twist to existing content. The higher item level stuff, not new content. New PvP season, not new content. So sometime in January, if you raid, you're getting a new raid. If you don't raid, you're getting no content. So all this content, I keep saying all this content because there's a lot of bullet points here. The mediocre small amount of content that you get in 8.1 is what's going to have to last you until season 2, and then season 2 into what arrives later on. So we have the Crucible of Storms raid. This has the same issue as the season 2 launch as well. If you're into raids, then this is great. If you're not, this is basically not content. We have the Xalatath content, which appears that, it's going to be some story content. Hopefully it's going to be a little bigger than these. It does appear to be the only story content coming, so maybe it'll be the length of all 3 of these combined. So maybe we'll get an hour and a half to 3 hours max of content there. And then at some point, we have the Coltiran Human and Zandalari Troll allied races. Once again, not really content, right? These are allied races. So what do we have coming between the launch of patch 8.1 and the launch of patch 8.2? Not a lot. We've got 2 raids, which if you raid, that's great. If you don't, then it's basically no content. We've got probably, let's be generous. Let's say you're playing both sides. You've got maybe, let's say 9 to 10 hours of story content, and then a new Warfront that's basically like the one that we're already playing. The main difference here is they're probably going to be on alternate schedules, so the Horde can do one while the Alliance does the other, and vice versa. So that's pretty much it. Not a lot of content in 8.1. So what do I think this means for the channel? So for the channel, I think this means at the start of 8.1, I'm going to be motivated, I'm going to be excited, I'm going to be playing the new island expeditions and the incursions for sure. I think this is going to be the patch where I'm going to be able to get all my characters to max level, which may help me to choose a main for Horde and Alliance. You're definitely going to see me doing, leveling on streams. I'm going to start to put out the class guides as things get to 120. So you're going to see that kind of stuff happen. Now imagine this is all going to take the first, let's say 2 months or so, 2 months. So we're talking, we'll be mid-February or so. As far as I know, 8.2 is not going to come out until summer or possibly later. We'll have to see. They haven't said that for sure, but it's generally about 4 months in between patch cycles. So if this comes out in December to January, February, March, April, so we're looking at mid-April, probably going to have 2 months there where there's nothing to do, nothing for me to do in World of Warcraft. But that's also about the time that the Division 2 comes out, so I imagine that the way this is going to play out is I'm going to do a burst of a lot of WoW content from, mid-December through about mid-February. Then there's going to be a little lull. The Division 2 is going to come out. I'm probably going to play that for a while until patch 8.2 comes out. And I do plan on trying to see if I can do some content for that on the YouTube channel as well. It's one of the big games on my radar to try and play and maybe make some guides for because I really like the first one. So that sounds like a lot of doom and gloom, and I think it is. Honestly, let's just be honest. I think it is. I'm excited for patch 8.1 mainly because I see it as being able to level my alts. And to me, getting my alts to max level frees me up to just make guide videos, which is what you guys like, and it's what I like to make. So that's what I want to end up doing, is guide videos. And then I can get into some more max level stuff and kind of change up the stream away from leveling streams to, actually doing some content at max level, whatever there is to be had at max level. So it does sound very doom and gloom, and I would say that it is. But here's the thing. I am much, much, much more positive about patch 8.2. I think patch 8.2 is the antithesis of this patch, where we are going to have a ton of content to play. There's going to be a ton of things to do. So having all my alts at max level at that point is awesome, because then I could be doing all that content across all the different classes, all the different specializations. That's going to open up all kinds of cool streams, new guides. We're going to have, new types of content to do, and new quests and new zones and all this stuff. There's just I know they haven't announced everything that they're going to announce for 8.2, but they've announced a lot of it, and just what they've announced so far is a ton of content. It's so much more content than I even feel like we got with the launch of BFA. So I think 8.2 is going to be the patch that totally turns things around, I hope, for Battle for Azeroth. That's 4 more months or so, or 5, or however many it is, to provide more feedback to the devs and see if they listen. I think also patch 8.2 is going to be a bit of a turning point for the community and myself as well to see, is Blizzard listening to the feedback that we're giving? And are they implementing that into 8.2? Or are they still doing that thing where they kind of say, you think you want it, but you don't. We're going to do whatever we want regardless of your feedback. So, I think that's kind of how things are going to go. I wanted to separate this out from the news video on Tuesday because this is obviously a longer video because I really just wanted to talk about 8.1 a little bit more in depth. And now I can kind of skip this in the news and keep it, to a reasonable length. So, that's what I think is going on. Let me know what you think. Are you playing a single character at max level? If you do, what's your interpretation of this? Does this feel like a painful lack of content? And do you think that, maybe this is stuff that you can tackle in a single month and just kind of be done and move on, play some other game? Do you think this is actually a lot of content? How do you feel about the time gating within the content that's coming out in 8.1? And what do you think about the possibility of time gating other things like maybe the war campaign? Are you as excited for 8.2 as I am? Are you into The Division? Are you interested in seeing some content for that on the channel? Let me know. I appreciate your feedback on this topic. It'll kind of help me figure out, what direction I want to head in terms of making content during this patch. And, I appreciate your support. I appreciate all the subscriptions, the likes, the comments. I just did the drawing for the 500 sub giveaway. When I hit 750 subscribers, which I'm pretty close, going to be doing another giveaway. And then after that, it's on to 1,000 subs and the final giveaway that I hope to make incredibly awesome if my finances allow. But either way, I just wanted to, end this by once again saying, thank you. We had Thanksgiving here in the U.S., and so, you take time to say what you're thankful for, and I'm thankful to all the people who have been supporting me for the past several months, all of you who have been putting up with me as I take a break from World of Warcraft, waiting for 8.1 to come out, and all of you that have been patiently awaiting more guides. I truly do appreciate your support and everything that you've been doing to just build me up and help me feel good about my content and the things that I'm creating. So thank you. I hope you're having a good time in whatever game you're playing, be that whether you're still chugging along in BFA or taking time out like I am to play some other stuff that's been, sitting on the shelf waiting for you. And as always, I'll see you on the next video.